But I stayed one night all night because I didn't know she was going to make it that night. And she wouldn't really talk or do anything before then. She'd at least, if I talked to her in her ear, she would communicate a little something. But the last, she didn't. And I would just reach down and in her ear, I say, "Grandma, do you see Jesus?" And she kind of reacted a little bit, but there was not really too much reacting then. I kept on saying that she was out somewhere, and I thought maybe she saw Jesus before he took her. So, well, I'll get on to Oliver's side. I know it's taken a long time. Yeah, what's that? Well, what time is it?
It's 4.
I'll hurry.
Try, because everybody's long-winded.
Okay, well, I'm sorry. I thought about this a lot.
Okay, just finish chapter 3.
Well,
You're a Slater. What do you expect?
That's right.
Hey, Oliver deserves as much time, I think. We can't cut him short just because he's not here to speak for himself. Jeez.
he wouldn't have taken this long, that's for sure. Well, I know it doesn't seem possible, but this last March the 10th, Georgia has been gone for 30 years.
Wow.
And March the 10th is when we buried Oliver 3 years before, so it's been 33 years that Oliver's been dead. It doesn't seem possible to me. I don't know where the time's gone. But I lost my parents at a very young age. And we had well, Georgia had me, and she had trouble when she had me, and so Oliver didn't want to have another child because he was scared that something might happen again. They told him that she could have died or I could have died when they had me. And so it took 8 years of us talking to Oliver, both of us trying to. I wanted some brothers and sisters, and she was helping me towards the end. And I was 8 years old, almost 9, and she got pregnant and had another baby. And she had it premature, and it did not last but one day in the incubator. And I never got to see it, and Georgia never got to see it. But I carried around in my billfold a long time a picture of the baby in the casket. And if I would have had that baby, he would have been almost 60 years old now. It doesn't seem possible. So, there's 25 grandchildren. Oh, and Georgia named him, I forgot that, Oliver William Slater. So she had the O-W for grandpa, but she didn't use Oscar. She named Oliver William Slater. And there's a tombstone that we used to visit every time we went to this cemetery and put flowers. And I could show you where it was. But there were 25 grandchildren altogether. Philip, I'm number 1, and Philip is number 25.
Hey, B-5, one more time for the camera, buddy. One more time for the camera. There we go. Thank
But Oliver and Georgia had 2, John had 5, Herman had 3, Walter had 3, and Mary Lou had 7, and Rachel had 3, and Becky had 2. And if you add that all up, it comes to 25.
At Mary and Oklahoma, we're real busy.
Yeah. Yeah. So I love to come over to California and be with my cousins and go to the ocean. And one time I remember, I was telling some people, but Homer was following the produce down. He went from Salinas down to Imperial Valley, took the whole family with him, and they stayed around, and then he carried over to come to Phoenix, and they stayed a couple of months. And they come over and visit, and we were eating Lazy Lou's fish and chips, which was famous around there for you to get that. And I looked over, and here's Clara in a high chair. She's not that old, maybe a year and a half, 2 years. Clara was in a high chair, and she had in the high chair, she had one of those cocktail sauces that they gave that was pretty spicy on her playpen, and she had a French fry in her hand. And the French fry was weeping down, and she would take that French fry and dip it in the sauce. She'd put it in her mouth, pull it out, still had the full French fry there, but just eating up all the cocktail sauce. And she kept on until that thing fall apart. She'd dip it in again, go again until she couldn't have been very old. But I told Naomi, I said, Clara always seemed older than the rest, or as big as the rest, because she hung in there no matter what they did or what they wanted to do. Clara was in the middle of everything.
She was holding a baby with one hand, a French fry with the other.
Yeah, that gorgeous one.
What?
She just stepped out. I'll be back in a minute.
Okay.
She missed this.
Well, I told her that. I told her I was going to tell her that, so that's probably why she knew I did.
They could download it from my blog for $30.
You would have let me come up here. Well, I remember one time we went over there and Roxanne went and brought a friend over and we went to the roller coaster at Santa Cruz. Went to the roller coaster over at Santa Cruz, and Beth went with us, and we were riding the rides on the wharf, and so we went into this thing that spun you around, and when the guy pulled down the bar, pulled it on me, and I weighed more then, and it was so tight, I said, I can't breathe. He said, well, wait a minute, and he lifted it back up, and he redid it, and it was there, and I said, oh, that's much better. And I looked over, and Beth had about that far from the... She said she almost fell out of that thing. And then we went over to another ride, and it was one that Bar was going to come down again. And we looked in line, and there was this other very heavy-set man, and said, how is he going to do it? And I said, well, that's why God made folds, so you have a place to put the bar. So, and Beth still remembers that. So, Shane married Roxanne in 1990, and they've had 5 kids, and the 2 girls are not here today, but Josiah's here, and Jacob, I know, my mind is just going, and Jacob was here, and my great-grandbaby is here. This is the first time, he's almost a year old, and this is the first time I've seen my great-grandbaby, so I was glad that they came. And there's only 4 kids living. Roxanne had one right in the middle of all of them named Destiny, and she had a disease, and when she took her full turn. She didn't come out alive. But we buried her in the cemetery in Phoenix. Now we're in Oregon. Well, I think that's about all. I've used up tons more than I should. And just so we did this, I can do it. Sandra Denise, we named her Sandra Denise a year and a half after I was born. And they said Ronnie, the nephew, and Sandra Denise.
I didn't know he was going to share all that. That's awesome. He's been thinking about this a long time.
Good job, Ron.
Yes.
No, it's fine. I just had a couple of little